Kuhl is an outdoor clothing brand that legend has it was born in the mountains. If you find anything cool, pick it up. It's got like a blue mountain decal in the logo. The logo is a blue mountain and like this shield symbol. Never have a problem flipping it unless I overprice it. More basic stuff can kind of sit around a little sluggishly. This is true of all of these brands. Nothing is truly foolproof, but these are the ones that get really, really close to it. These are my personal favorites, my picks. Kuhl behaves like other outdoor clothing brands in that it is seasonal. So it'll all sell year round, but it definitely biases towards certain kinds of clothing at certain times of year. So lighter weight, more breathable clothing in spring and summer, and heavier, warmer stuff, fall and winter, pretty straightforward. The shells are going to be worth the most money. Stuff like performance merino fabric, nicer pieces are going to be worth more, and with these nice brands, be sure you try to look up the style codes if you can find them. They'll be in the care tags, like the material tags, and sometimes you have to hunt around for them. But if you can find an exact match for the make and model of, like if you find a soft shell or a jacket, then you can ask for more money, because these buyers for outdoor clothing brands are very particular about what they want. They do a lot of comparison shopping, and they are willing to pay up for the right thing. So do your homework. Arc'teryx is probably my favorite outdoor clothing brand. It goes for the most money out of the ones that are relatively common, and the demand is the highest. Sell-through right now for pre-owned Arc'teryx in the men's clothing category is 165%. Kuhl was 99%. I forgot to mention that. It will sell itself. It is also seasonal. You can ask for a little bit more than other outdoor clothing brands. And if you can find rain jackets, especially, you can get a ton of money. A lot of Arc'teryx pieces will go for over $100 pre-owned. Patagonia is the prestige outdoor clothing brand that we all find the most frequently. I don't consider North Face or Marmot or Eddie Bauer, those tiers of outdoor clothing brands, really truly prestige. Patagonia still has a really built-in fervent fan base and buyer base. It is lower sell-through than the other two that I've mentioned. It's currently 74%, and that's lower than the majority of other brands coming up on the list too. It is not foolproof. You do kind of have to look before you leap. But in terms of quantity of items sold, this dwarfs both Kuhl and Arc'teryx. It's a huge brand. I would tread lightly if you find cotton t-shirts, really basic shorts, stuff that looks plain, that doesn't have a conspicuous Patagonia logo on it or something to recommend it as like a more technical piece. Be a little cautious about your buy price, because those can kind of sit around. But otherwise, it's fairly foolproof. As long as you don't spend too much on it, and as long as you have some idea of seasonality, you can put yourself a couple months into the future and say, is this going to appeal to the majority of the Patagonia buyers in a couple, 2-3 months? Then it's probably worth picking up. Patagonia, often you will find, not often, but sometimes you will find vintage pieces too. You can develop an eye for what those are like. If you find vintage Patagonia fleeces with Aztec prints, like the Southwestern geometric prints, those are worth probably the most of any Patagonia thing that you will find, other than goose down puffers, which you should be looking for also, just generally. Simms is a brand that's mostly purchased by fly fisher people, and it's one of the easiest brands to sell. The ask prices can be even higher than a lot of these more basic or more generic outdoor clothing brands. You will also find pieces that are not technically clothing. You can find what are called waders. They're these big Gore-Tex bib overall things with stocking feet. They look really weird if you're not familiar with fishing. They have suspenders. Those can be worth great money, even if you find them with holes. Even if you're at a garage sale, which is probably where you're going to find them, and the person tells you, like, these are leaky, they have a bunch of holes, I would still contemplate picking them up to flip them, because you can still sell those for like 50, 60, 80 bucks, because people like to repair them or harvest the material to make patches for other waders. It just has a lot of life in it generally. You'll also find wading boots, and those sell really well. Anything Sims, whether it's clothing, fishing gear, or bags, they also make like sling bags and vests, fishing vests. Anything Sims, pick it up and flip it. Even if it's branded with like a company logo or something, as long as you watch your buy price and you watch your ask price, it will sell itself. Currently 107% sell through, and that's looking back on the data from the past 90 days, which are cold, wintry days. This is going to pick up even more going into spring and summer. Fishing brands are going to be really good starting around now. Pelagic is another fishing brand. It's marketed to ocean fishermen. It's on this list because I live in San Diego, so I find it fairly frequently. You may not have access to it. If you do, if you ever find it, pick it up, flip it. It's an 84% sell-through right now in pre-owned condition. That's going to go through the roof going into the summer months. If you find graphic shorts or rash guards or t-shirts, sun shirts, you'll know it when you see it. It'll have fish print on it, or I found a piece once that was a shirt that had a fish find, like a sonar readout printed on it in rainbow colors. That stuff just flies out of your store. And you can get great money for it. This stuff, it will not sit in your store if the season is right for longer than a couple weeks unless you have some insane ask price for it. Icebreaker is a merino wool brand of clothing that's marketed again to outdoors type people. Also cyclists wear it, also just generally general people. Generally, general people tend to wear Icebreaker. It's really expensive stuff. It's nice in that because it is performance merino wool, you can still sell it if it has small stains or holes within reason. Maybe not big slashes, maybe not big gaping holes or big blood splatters, but if you find it with little holes, little imperfections, you can still flip it for some pretty decent money. Obviously not as much as if it's in immaculate condition, in which case it will sell itself. 140% sell through, 47% sell through rather right now. I'm sorry, I was looking at Smartwool to spoil the next one. 142%, so not that far off. It's one of the easiest brands to sell. Don't get it mixed up with Iceberg. If you buy Iceberg, you're still going to be in good shape because that's expensive stuff, but it is different. You're going to find shirts and sweaters primarily. If you find anything Icebreaker, just pick it up. And these performance merino wool brands, you actually stand a very good chance of finding them at the bins because they'll wind up there if they have flaws like I described. Smartwool is, I think, the most common, at least in my experience, of these performance merino brands. Everything that I said about Icebreaker applies to Smartwool. As I spoiled before, 140%. Screwed it up again. 147% sell-through currently for Smartwool. Even though they are merino brands, they will still sell just fine spring and summer. Maybe not quite as much as in fall, winter, but people purchase performance merino wool because it's temperature regulating generally in both directions. So you'll still be in good shape. Ibex is the least common of these major performance merino brands that I'm aware of that I've encountered. But it is the nicest and the most expensive, and it has the most demand. 198% sell-through. It's like what I just described, except even nicer, even more popular, and a little harder to find. With all of these outdoor brands, general outdoor fishing, and the performance merino wool pieces, there are tons and tons of other brands to know about, little niche brands. There's hunting clothing, there's cycling specific clothing. It's a great kind of cluster of genres of menswear to really familiarize yourself with. This is just a sampling, by the way, of my favorite brands. If you want more, I put together something called the Menswear Manifesto. That's 330 odd clothing brands broken down by sell-through rate and on like a category by category basis within each brand with my recommendations of how to source it and how to flip it. It's free / pay what you want, so you can take a look at it. It's on Gumroad if you decide to give me money for it now or later. That is an option that is available to you and encouraged, but if you just want to try it out for free or download it and you don't end up liking it, it is technically free. There's a link in the description. Lululemon, we're kind of moving into the athleisure section. I don't have to tell you what Lululemon is. The men's clothing in Lululemon has consistently just kicked ass. It's been an incredibly good, powerful, powerhouse little niche within the brand of Lululemon. In my experience, easier to sell than the women's. You don't have to know the make and model with as much precision as with women's. The demand is high, currently 99%. Even if you sell it with generic keywords, it'll still sell itself. Active shirts, shorts, pants, tops, bottoms, whatever, jackets, goes without saying, I think. It's all great. Rhone is less common than Lululemon. In my experience, easier to sell a little bit, and you get a little bit more money for it. I actually just came into a big stockpile of Rhone t-shirts that miraculously were all at one Goodwill, priced for between $6 and $8, and all in my size. And I thought, like, these athleisure people are delusional. Why would they spend this much money on basic stuff when you can get a Champion mesh workout t-shirt for $10 new? Well, I've been wearing them around the apartment, and they are made of magic. It's just amazing how much of a subjective difference it actually makes. So I have been made a believer in this kind of bougie athleisure stuff, which is to say that the people that buy it are willing to spend up for it, and they're willing to spend up for a reason, because it really is remarkably comfortable. A Rhone t-shirt new, the kind that I got, retails for like $50, $60. So it's not crazy to ask 35 or so bucks for a used one, and the demand's crazy. It's 95%, which is not like the craziest out of all this, but I've never once had a challenge selling Rhone. And it's good to be able to identify it with these little 2 X's. Let me show you a piece, actually. This is a good example. This is a Rhone shirt, and you will find these 3 X's on the shoulder or somewhere on the stitching, and it'll be an offset color. Good to just know that in case this screen printed logo happens to be worn thin or is illegible. Also, Lululemon, I think people know this. It's good to kind of know where to hunt for the Lululemon logo, because the strip can get torn out, the brand and size strip. Bylt, B-Y-L-T, is a more gym-oriented brand, athleisure brand. It's excellent, 117% sell-through rate. It'll be visually really boring. It's just plain, understated stuff. You can tell the fabric is a little bit thicker and nicer. Never had a challenge selling it. There is a bunch of gym brands that are good. Some of them great, but Bylt, I think, is the best of them, and it's the one that I've just consistently had the easiest time selling. Figs is a scrub brand, so if you're looking around for it on eBay, it usually lives outside of the clothing categories. It'll be in medical uniforms and scrubs. Men's is great, women's is great. It's kind of athleisure type fabric. You can kind of tell it by feel. The scrub section is great to kind of breeze through, because there's really only a couple of scrub brands that I'm familiar with that fit this profile of sells itself. You don't have to hunt and peck for category or seasonality. Figs and Jaannu, Jaannu, I think, but that one is less common. Figs is like the industry standard. This is the prestige Lululemon level scrub brand that everybody needs, wants, must have. The RSVLTS is usually spelled out as an acronym, RSVLTS. It has a logo with Teddy Roosevelt's face, and it's a lot of pop culture inspired graphic button-up short-sleeve shirts. Stuff sells itself. It's just a total no-brainer. I've bought it every time I have found it. I would even buy it if it had condition issues. You can look up the shirt based on the print. Some of them are more rare than others, and you can fetch more money. Typically, you're not going to flip them for less than like 30 to 40 bucks. I don't think they even make anything other than those short-sleeve shirts. Dixxon with 2 X's, also known as Dixxon Flannel Co., is another complete no-brainer. The demand is just outrageous. 161% sell-through right now. They do make flannel shirts. They also make hats. They make non-flannel shirts. They make all kinds of stuff. Everything that you find, pick it up and flip it. Ariat is a surprisingly common brand for how high the sell-through is. 173% sell-through. This is just on a brand level. This goes for all these brands. Certain categories will sell better than others. It's a rodeo or Western or workwear type brand. It's got a logo that looks like a radioactive waste symbol to me and to a lot of people. I've had great luck selling their jeans. I've had great luck selling their button-up shirts. That's mostly what I have found. Whatever you find, just pick it up. It'll be fine. Outerknown is technically a surf brand. It's Kelly Slater's brand. But I've found Oxford shirts a bunch from them. I've found Outerknown stuff that has nothing to do with surfing thematically, and all of it has sold wonderfully well. 99% sell-through in pre-owned condition across the whole brand. You pretty much can't go wrong. It may not fly straight off the shelves, but if the seasonality is right and if the piece is right, the price is right, you don't need to worry about this sitting in your store past a certain, 3 months, I would say. Faherty is another perennial favorite. It's mostly shirts. I have found swim trunks a couple of times, but it's mostly shirts. And a really easy logo to remember and identify. It's got the sunrise thing going on. It is a California-based brand, so I might be lucky in that I've lived in California, so I've had access to it. Amazingly just strong sellers all the time, regardless of what it is. I've made above average money on everything that I've sold from Faherty. Psycho Bunny. I don't know what the deal with Psycho Bunny is. Who wears Psycho Bunny? It's a rabbit with skull and crossbones on it. It's very edgy, it's dangerous. 132% sell-through. It's great. Sweatpants, shorts, polo shirts, sweaters, t-shirts, all of it. I think Robert Godwin or something. Isn't that an author? I don't know. Robert something. Not Robert Graham. A different clothing Robert. A psycho, twisted Robert. If you find it, buy it. Buck Mason is one of a handful of men's clothing brands that will call like the fancy lad brands or the riding a one wheel to the open office plan workplace brands. They're visually boring, mostly like drab earth tones or navy blues or blacks, and there's nothing visually to distinguish them. And in terms of the quality, there's not much to distinguish them, but for some reason, these brands are highly, highly, highly desired by guys who are really into clothing. Buck Mason is one of them. 128% sell-through. It's hard to describe what to look for because it all looks the same. I will say, Henley shirts tend to sell really well in these kinds of brands, and in brands like them with lower sell-through, like John Varvatos is a good example. Henleys are the Joe Rogan shirts, as I've called them, with the buttons right here that are pullover. Oxford shirts tend to do really well in these brands. Jackets, pants, it all does pretty well. It's hard to miss with these. Tailor Stitch is another one of these. Everything that I just said about Buck Mason goes for Tailor Stitch. 140%. I have found t-shirts from them that are really heavy, made of like a heavy knit cotton fabric. Those sell really, really well. I don't remember the name of those, but those always sell instantaneously. Toddy Snyder, same deal. I think this is a little bit more uptown than the last two. I think it's a little more designery, and it's verging into kind of more formal wear. I think Toddy Snyder makes more dress slacks and dress shirts than the other two, but also you can find basic pieces, everyday wear pieces like that. 121% sell-through on Toddy Snyder. All of these brands, you can make slightly bigger asks, sometimes significantly bigger asks for basic pieces. Don't be shy about doing that. The demand is really healthy. And we end on the only formal wear brand, or I don't know, formal wear is like a technical category. It's like tuxedos. Suits, dress shirts, dress slacks, office wear. Out of all of those brands, Isaia Napoli is my favorite. It's the one that I am always excited to find, the most excited to find, the one that I have the highest confidence in selling quickly and for good money. And the sell-through is 71% in pre-owned condition, which is pretty remarkably high for this kind of a brand. Usually dress shirts, suits, the sell-through is way lower than these more generic clothing brands. The suits, if you can find a reasonably recent Napoli suit or blazer, that's great money. That can be really, really impressive money, like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Even the vintage stuff does well. The first time I ever found this brand, it was on the floor at a Goodwill in LA. It was this blazer, like a navy wool blazer, and it had big holes in the elbow, like moth holes or something, and it still flipped for 30 bucks. So it's a phenomenal brand. It's not all suits, like I said. You can find dress shirts. I think they make swimwear too. I think that's Napoli. The logo is a little red piece of coral. If you find anything with a red piece of coral on it, it's like, I think it's one stem with a couple of branches. It's like a little trident, like that. I would just pick it up. Like, familiarize yourself with that piece of coral and pick it up. Sometimes it's just marketed as Napoli. The full phrase is Isaia Napoli. So those are the actual brands. I want to put two general categories of clothing on your radar. I think you've picked up over the course of these brands the theme of performance merino, and I just put out a video specifically about this. There's tons of brands that are outdoor brands that do performance merino wool pieces. Generally, those are worth picking up. You have to be a little bit careful when you descend into the lower echelons of those outdoor clothing brands, because they also make generic merino wool sweaters for everyday, dinner party wear. I'm thinking here of Eddie Bauer. If you find a merino wool Eddie Bauer sweater out in the wild, chances are it's probably just generic wool. It's not meant for purpose. It's not meant to be worn cycling or kayaking or mountain climbing or whatever. That's the kind of stuff that you need to look for. It's good to know as many outdoor clothing brands as you can and to develop a feel for performance merino wool. That stuff is probably, out of all the fabrics that you're going to consistently find, the easiest one to sell regardless of brand. Also, I know from doing 3 different iterations of the Menswear Manifesto that the items in most of these brands, most brands period, that go for the most money most consistently are always goose down puffers, jackets and vests. If you find a piece, I would say almost regardless of brand, even if it's a fast fashion brand like Uniqlo, if it is goose down fill, so 80% or more goose down fill, which is I think the cutoff for being able to call it goose fill. If the price is right, I would 9 times out of 10 probably pull the trigger on that, unless it's some gunked up, no name, nothing vintage brand and the thing is giant and ugly and no one's going to want to buy it, which is something that I've run across many times. But let's say, for example, you find a goose down puffer Patagonia jacket like the one that you've seen me wear in my videos. Those are like, if you put it up for the right price, it'll be gone within 24 hours. If you find a goose down puffer in a streetwear brand like Kith or Supreme or something and it's real, you can flip it sometimes. I remember some pieces going for over $1,000 pre-owned. And goose down, especially in winter, in known brands, the sell-through is going to be through the roof. So that is pretty much no miss proposition with a big asterisk. That asterisk lurks imminently over all of these recommendations. And these are just my personal favorites. This is a gut check list. There are plenty of other brands that actually have higher sell-through than these, a lot of them, but I just have not run into them enough to have like the emotional connection or whatever. Like I don't have the personal track record with them to be able to recommend them with as much confidence, but there's tons of those brands again in the Menswear Manifesto and beyond. There's a seemingly infinite number of men's clothing brands that you can sell. And of course, there are tons of brands where there's a particular category that works like this, as opposed to just the category universally of the entire brand, where pants will sell really well or shirts will sell really well, but the rest of it is kind of hit or miss or bad. Hope this helps, and goodbye.